No one in the Galactic Council chamber expected fear. They had gathered for routine judgment, surrounded by stars and shields older than most civilizations. Hundreds of species watched from crystal seats and holographic thrones. This meeting was supposed to be simple. A warning message had been sent to a forgotten world. Earth, a small, isolated planet on the edge of mapped space. A species labeled non-threatening centuries ago. Humans had no seat in the council. No allies. No voice. The message was clear and final. Submit to inspection or face consequences. 3 cycles passed. No reply came. The council assumed silence meant fear. Or extinction. Then space changed. At first, the sensors showed nothing wrong. Stars burned as usual. Trade lanes were clear. Fleets drifted in calm orbits around the capital system. Then time stuttered. Clocks desynced by microseconds. Light bent where it should not. Navigation systems screamed errors with no cause. Several observers reported the same impossible thing. Space itself was folding. Before anyone could speak, the void tore open. It was not a jump gate. It was not a wormhole. It was a wound. Something massive forced its way into reality, pushing stars aside like dust. The chamber fell silent as the object fully emerged. A warship. No, the warship. It was larger than a city, longer than some moons. Its hull was dark, layered, scarred by weapons no longer known. Human writing ran along its surface, carved deep, not glowing, not hidden. There were no visible engines, no energy flares, no defensive shields. It simply existed. Every fleet in the system locked weapons instantly, then froze. Targeting systems failed. Range data contradicted itself. Some sensors claimed the ship was meters away. Others said it was light years distant. One ancient AI shut itself down after identifying the vessel as a temporal impossibility. Fear spread through the chamber like poison. This was not a scout. This was not diplomacy. The warship did not move. Minutes passed. No communication. No threats. No demands. Just silence. Then one council member whispered the question none wanted to ask. Why would a species like humans build something like this? As if an answer, a single transmission arrived. No encryption. No greeting. Just a calm, human voice. This vessel acknowledges receipt of your warning. The voice paused. Earth will not comply. Before the council could respond, the warship powered a single external system. Only one. Nearby, a lifeless moon, used for ceremonial gravity balance, began to shake. Cracks formed across its surface, glowing faintly red. The fractures spread, slow and deliberate, like a hand squeezing stone. Then the moon split. Not exploded. Not shattered. Split cleanly in half. The 2 pieces drifted apart, silent, intact, ruined forever. The warship powered down again. No follow-up attack came. No demand was made. The message was clear. That was a demonstration. Panic erupted across the chamber. Fleets attempted emergency maneuvers. Some tried to flee. Others begged for permission to fire. The warship finally moved. Slowly, calmly, directly toward the galactic capital. Another message arrived, shorter than the first. You mistook our silence for weakness. You mistook our distance for fear. Earth did not send diplomats. The ship's weapons began to wake. Across the galaxy, ancient alarms, and used for thousands of years, began to sound. And for the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council understood one terrifying truth. Humanity had not come to speak. They had come to remind the galaxy what happens when humans are ignored. The Galactic Council chamber did not return to order. It fractured. Arguments erupted in a dozen languages. Some delegates shouted for immediate surrender. Others demanded total war. Ancient species that had survived 1,000 conflicts now spoke with shaking voices. Outside the chamber, the human warship continued its slow approach. It did not accelerate. It did not threaten. It simply advanced, as if time itself was bending to its patience. Military analysts flooded the council with data. None of it made sense. The ship's mass readings contradicted each other. Its internal structure looked layered in ways modern physics could not explain. Parts of it appeared older than the empires studying it. Other sections looked unfinished, raw, brutal, functional. And at its center, sensors detected something worse. Human life signs. Thousands of them. They were not cryo-frozen, not artificial. They were alive, awake, steady. The council expected cheers, arrogance, pride. Instead, they felt something unfamiliar. Resolve. Long-buried archives were opened. Humanity has not always been forgotten. Once, they were noticed, watched, studied. They were a young species from a loud world. Too emotional, too violent, too fast. Their early radio signals reached the stars filled with war, music, and desperate curiosity. The galaxy took interest. Then came first contact. Not peaceful, not official. A minor empire tested humanity the way predators test prey. Human colonies burned. Cities vanished. Billions died. The council of that era labeled it an unfortunate misunderstanding. Reparations were discussed. Sanctions were delayed. Humanity asked for help. None came. Then humans did something unexpected. They stopped asking. Their transmissions went quiet. Their colonies vanished from charts. Their trade routes collapsed. The galaxy assumed the problem solved itself. Humans were weak, after all. That assumption now rotted in the open. Deep records showed something chilling. Humanity never surrendered. They withdrew. Not in panic. In planning. They abandoned visible space. Shut down loud technologies. Masked their energy signatures. They let their enemies believe Earth was dying. Behind that lie, humanity changed. They studied alien warfare not to copy it, but to understand its flaws. They learned patience from species that lived millennia. They learned sacrifice from their own history. Human scientists rewrote physics where it failed them. Human engineers stopped asking what was allowed and started asking what was necessary. Most of all, humans remembered. They remembered every world that watched them burn and did nothing. Not with rage, with clarity. The council received another transmission. No threats this time. No weapon display. Just data. Human history, unfiltered. Every invasion. Every ignored plea. Every council vote was delayed until it was too late. Footage of human children hiding under rubble while alien ships left orbit untouched. The chamber went quiet again. Not from fear. From shame. Then the final file opened. A designation. Grave of Empires. The warship outside was not a flagship. It was a monument. Built over centuries. Not by one generation, but many. Each layer of armor forged from the ruins of lost human worlds. Each weapon system powered by technology was banned by the Council because humans were never part of the Council. The ship was not designed to win wars. It was designed to end them. A junior delegate finally asked the question that froze the room. If this is one ship, how many more do they have? The answer came from human data itself. No number. Just a sentence. Enough. Outside, a coalition fleet finally moved. Not to attack. To test. A single destroyer broke formation and fired a warning shot, low power, long range. A symbolic act meant to provoke communication. The beam hit the human ship's hull. Nothing happened. No shields flared. No armor melted. The beam simply stopped, as if the energy had been swallowed. The human warship responded instantly. Not with weapons. With motion. For the first time, it changed speed. The shift was subtle, but space rippled outward like water struck by stone. Several nearby ships lost power. Artificial gravity failed. Crews were thrown against walls. The message was unmistakable. Do not try again. Another human transmission followed. This one was longer. Spoken by a single voice. Male. Calm. Warn. This vessel is not here for conquest, the voice said. It is here because you forgot us. The council demanded terms. Apologies. Negotiation. The voice answered simply. Earth waited. Silence followed. Then the voice continued. While your empires rose and fell, Earth rebuilt. While you argued laws, Earth buried its dead. While you forgot us, we prepared. The warship slowed again, returning to its steady approach. We are not angry, the voice said. We are certain. Across the galaxy, panic spread faster than light. Trade routes collapsed as ships rerouted away from human space. Border worlds declared neutrality. Some empires erased old records, hoping denial might save them. It would not, because humanity was no longer hidden. Every system now knew the truth. Humans were not extinct. They were not weak. They were not asking permission. They had endured silence for centuries. And now, they were done being quiet. Inside the warship, the human crew prepared without ceremony. There were no speeches. No celebrations. Each crew member knew their role. I knew the cost. The ship's core burned something more precious than fuel. Memory. Every activation consumed stored human experiences, volunteered memories from generations who would never see this moment. Lives lived so this ship could move, fire, and endure. Victory would cost humanity something it could never replace. They accepted that price long ago. The Council issued an emergency decree. All hostile actions against humanity were suspended. A formal invitation to negotiations was transmitted. Apologies were drafted. Reparations promised. The human ship did not stop. Another message arrived. This is not a negotiation, the human voice said. This is the answer. The warship adjusted its trajectory, not toward the council chamber, but toward an ancient empire's border, the one that first burned Earth's skies. As the realization spread, terror replaced confusion. The galaxy finally understood what humanity had brought with them. Not diplomacy, not conquest, judgment. And as the warship crossed the invisible line into hostile space, ancient defense networks woke from slumber. Weapons charged, fleets mobilized. The first true battle since humanity's return was about to begin. And this time, humans would not disappear afterward. The first shots of the war did not sound like war. There were no explosions, no blazing fire across the stars, no heroic last stands broadcast to the galaxy. There was only silence. The ancient empire that once burned Earth's skies reacted exactly as the Council predicted. Their border defenses activated in layers, overlapping fields of shields and weapon platforms refined over thousands of years. Their fleets poured out from hidden docks, vast and disciplined, moving with practiced precision. They had prepared for every enemy the galaxy could imagine. Just not this one. The human warship crossed the border without slowing. Defense platforms locked on. Thousands of targeting arrays confirmed the same impossible result. The ship was there, yet not entirely present. Its outline flickered between probabilities. Weapons fired anyway. Energy beams, kinetic slugs, gravity lances, everything struck the same point. Nothing happened. Not a shield flare. Not a scorch mark. Not even debris. The attacks vanished the moment they touched the hull, as if reality itself refused to deliver them. For the first time in its long history, the Empire hesitated. That hesitation lasted less than a second. Then the human ship responded. It did not unleash a barrage. It did not fire back in anger. Instead, a single section of its hull opened, slowly, deliberately, revealing a structure that made alien scientists recoil in horror. It was not a cannon. It was a lens. Space bent inward toward it. Light twisted. Sensors overloaded. Some instruments began reporting negative distances. Others showed events that had not yet happened. The human voice returned, calm and precise. This weapon does not destroy, it said. It is correct. The lens activated. One enemy cruiser, just one, ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no wreckage, no radiation. One moment it was there. The next, it had never been built. Crew manifests vanished from databases. Communication logs erased themselves. Even memory records aboard nearby ships showed gaps, as if the cruiser had been imagined and then forgotten. Panic erupted across the Empire's fleet. Commanders screamed orders. Fleets broke formation. Some ships fired blindly. Others tried to flee. The human ship did not chase. It selected another target. This time, a carrier. Gone. Then a weapons platform. Gone. The galaxy watched in disbelief as the Empire's defenses collapsed, not through destruction, but erasure. These were not losses that could be mourned. They were losses that could not be remembered. Inside the warship, the human crew remained silent. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. Each activation of the weapon dimmed the lights slightly. The ship's core pulsed slower, heavier. A crew member closed her eyes as stored memories were consumed. Someone else's childhood, a laugh, a warm day on a beach that no longer existed. She accepted it without complaint. They all did. The Empire finally changed tactics. A massive flagship broke through the chaos and transmitted on all frequencies. "We surrender," the alien commander declared. "We will negotiate. Name your terms." The human warship stopped firing. For a moment, hope flickered. Then the human voice replied. Surrender was an option, it said. Centuries ago, the flagship's engines failed. Not damaged, stopped. Artificial gravity collapsed. Power grids shut down as if switched off by an invisible hand. The human ship drifted closer. You did not conquer Earth, the voice continued. You tested it. You burned it to see if anyone would care. The warship extended dozens of narrow beams, not weapons, but scanners, probing deep into the flagship's core systems. We waited to see what you would become afterward. The scanners withdrew. You became worse. Across the galaxy, council members watched the feeds in stunned silence. This was not war. This was judgment carried out with terrifying patience. The Empire's remaining fleets withdrew completely, abandoning entire systems to escape annihilation. Borders that had stood for millennia dissolved in hours. But the human ship did not pursue them. It turned away. That was when the galaxy realized the truth. Humanity was not here to conquer territory. They were here to make examples. A new message spread across all known spaces, broadcast openly. This was the response to one invasion, the human voice said. There are others. The data that followed named worlds. Dates. Crimes buried by time. Species that had profited from humanity's destruction and quietly moved on. Each name hit like a death sentence. Panic turned into desperation. Some empires began destroying their own archives. Others offered immediate reparations. A few, prideful and ancient, began mobilizing for war. They would not get the chance. Within the warship, alarms sounded softly. Not danger alarms. Warnings. The core's reserves dropped below optimal levels. Too many memories had been consumed too quickly. Too much history burned for power. The captain finally spoke aloud. Not to the galaxy, but to his crew. We proceed as planned, he said. No acceleration. No one argued. They all knew the truth. This ship was not meant to survive a long campaign. It was meant to make a point so severe that no further campaign would be needed. The next system on the list belonged to a different kind of enemy. Not an empire. A corporation state that had sold weapons used against Earth. That had denied involvement. That had grown rich while humanity bled. The system was heavily fortified but crowded. Billions of civilians, trillions in infrastructure. The galaxy waited, holding its breath. Would humans erase another fleet? Crack another world? The human ship entered orbit and did nothing. Hours passed. Then the human voice returned. We are not monsters, it said. We learned from them. The ship released something new. Not a weapon. Information. Every contract. Every illegal shipment. Every falsified report. Every executive decision that chose profit over human lives. The data spread faster than any fleet. Markets collapsed. Alliances shattered. Civil unrest ignited across the system. The corporation state fell without a single shot fired. The galaxy trembled. That was when fear became something else. Understanding. Humanity was not here to burn the galaxy. They were here to reshape it. To remove the structures that allowed suffering to be ignored. And they were willing to pay any price to do it. As the warship prepared to leave the system, the council sent one final message. What do you want? They asked. The human reply came after a long pause. We want what you denied us, the voice said. Memory. The ship turned once more toward the dark, toward the next name on the list, toward the next lesson. And across the galaxy, every species now asked the same question in terror and awe. How many lessons did humanity still intend to teach? The galaxy did not sleep. After the fall of the corporation state, no system truly rested. Trade routes lay abandoned, hyperlanes clogged with refugees and fleeing fleets. Ancient empires that once moved with absolute confidence now acted like nervous animals, reacting to shadows and rumors. And at the center of all of it, the human warship continued onward. It did not hurry. That was what terrified them most. The next target was not hidden. It was known to everyone. A vast imperial union that had never attacked Earth directly, but had watched the invasion happen and chosen profit over action. They had sold supplies, provided fuel, voted against intervention every time the issue reached the council. They called it neutrality. Humans called it complicity. As the warship entered the system, planetary defense arrays powered up instantly. Tens of thousands of ships formed layered formations around the core worlds. Massive orbital habitats evacuated their outer rings, preparing for siege. Billions waited. Nothing happened. The human ship stopped at the edge of the system and went silent. No weapons powered. No engines flared. No messages sent. Hours passed. Then days. Inside the imperial capital, leaders argued themselves hoarse. Some demanded preemptive attack. Others begged for surrender. Economists warned of total collapse. Priests declared this moment a test from forgotten gods. The warship remained still. That was when the first broadcasts began. Not from humans. From within the Empire itself. Archived footage surfaced across public channels. Classified recordings of council meetings long buried. Votes displayed in clear numbers. Names attached. Statements played back without context stripped away. We cannot risk war over a minor species. Humanity is not economically significant. Losses are acceptable. The population watched in stunned silence as their own leaders' words condemned them. Then came more. Evidence of secret arms deals. Profits traced directly to destroyed human colonies. Reports showing that intervention fleets had been ready, fully capable of stopping the invasion, but were deliberately held back. Civil unrest ignited like dry, fuel-meeting flame. Protests overwhelmed cities. Security forces refused orders. Entire fleets declared neutrality or defected, unwilling to die for leaders exposed as liars. Still, the human ship did nothing. Inside the warship, the crew monitored the collapse with quiet focus. This was not revenge. This was the design. The captain watched the data streams without expression. He had seen these images before. Every human aboard had. They were required viewing. A reminder of why this ship existed. The core pulsed again, dimmer now. Another fragment of memory burned away to sustain the systems maintaining the ship's impossible presence. A human engineer steadied herself against a console as a memory, not her own, slipped away. Someone else's first love, donated decades earlier. She whispered a thank you to the ghost she would never know. The Empire's leaders finally sent a transmission. I was not proud. It was desperate. We acknowledge our failures, the message said. We are prepared to offer reparations, technology, territory, anything. Please, stop this. The human reply came slowly. You misunderstand, the voice said. This is not punishment. The warship moved at last, gliding closer to the capital world. This is mercy. The leaders froze. Mercy did not look like this. The human voice continued. We could erase your fleets. Collapse your star. End your species in a single cycle. Weapons systems across the Empire flared in panic. We will not. Relief surged through the system, brief, fragile. Instead, the warship transmitted a single file. It contained no images of destruction. It contained a list. Every human colony lost. Every population number. Every child is born and never grows. At the end was a final calculation. What humanity would have become without interference. The economic output. The cultural exchange. The scientific progress. The galaxy saw, for the first time, the cost of ignoring humanity, not in lives alone, but in futures erased. This is what you took, the human voice said. Without lifting a weapon. Silence followed. Then the warship withdrew its targeting arrays entirely. We will leave you alive, the voice said. We will leave you free. The pause that followed felt endless. And you will live knowing exactly what you allowed. The transmission ended. Across the Empire, leaders resigned or were arrested. Some took their own lives. Entire political systems collapsed overnight, replaced not by human rule, but by internal reckoning. The warship turned away. That was when the galaxy finally understood the pattern. Humanity did not want obedience. They wanted responsibility. As the ship departed, a junior council observer whispered what many were thinking. This is worse than destruction. They were right. Because destruction ended pain. Memory did not. The warship continued on, its course plotted toward the edge of known space. Fewer targets remained now, not because humanity lacked enemies, but because most were already surrendering in ways that mattered. Slaver guilds dismantled themselves. Hidden prisons opened. Long-suppressed species were freed, not by human soldiers, but by the fear of what would happen if they were not. The galaxy reshaped itself ahead of the human advance. Inside the ship, the cost grew heavier. Systems flickered more often. Corridors dimmed. Crew rotations shortened as fatigue set in. The core's output dropped below projected sustainability. The captain gathered his senior officers. We are ahead of schedule, one reported quietly. But the core will not last beyond 2 more full demonstrations. The captain nodded. That is enough, he said. No one asked what would happen after. They all knew. The warship was never meant to return. As the ship crossed into the next system, an automated beacon activated, an ancient device, older than the council itself. It began recording. Not the ship. The reactions. Fear. Reform. Collapse. Change. This was humanity's final argument. Not shouted, not forced, shown. Far away, on Earth, no celebrations filled the skies. No grand speeches echoed across cities. Most humans did not even know the warship's exact location. They only knew that the galaxy was changing. The borders were quiet. That for the first time in centuries, no unknown fleets loitered near human space. And deep beneath Earth's surface, in vaults sealed long ago, names were being crossed off lists written in blood and patience. The warship moved on, slower now, heavier with purpose and loss. And the galaxy watched, learning the most difficult lesson it had ever faced. Human mercy was not gentle, but it was fair, and once granted, it would never be offered again. By the time the warship reached the edge of mapped space, the galaxy had changed its language. Words like dominance and expansion faded from official doctrine. New phrases replaced them: containment, restraint, accountability. Entire military academies rewrote their core lessons, no longer asking how wars were won, but how they began. And always, unspoken but understood, there was one truth beneath every discussion. Humans were watching. The warship no longer needed to fire. Its presence alone was enough. Yet inside the vessel, the reality was far less certain. The grave of empires was dying. Not catastrophically, not dramatically, but steadily, the way living things do when they have given too much of themselves. The core no longer pulsed with strength. Its rhythm had slowed, each cycle heavier than the last. Systems that once ran effortlessly now required careful rationing. Sections of the ship were sealed off, not from damage, but from emptiness, memory stores completely consumed, leaving nothing left to burn. The crew felt it most sharply, not as painful, as an absence. A navigator paused one day, fingers hovering over her console, suddenly unsure why a melody echoed faintly in her thoughts. She knew it had once mattered. She knew she had volunteered for it. But the memory itself was gone. A Marine found that the face of his mother had blurred in his mind, features dissolving into general warmth and safety. He sat quietly with the feeling until it passed, then returned to his post without complaint. This was the price. Not death. Erasure, chosen freely. Every person aboard had signed the same oath. If humanity was to be remembered, parts of humanity would have to be forgotten. The captain carried the heaviest burden. He had given more than most. His childhood home, his brother's voice, the last peaceful year before the invasion that took everything from his world. He still remembered why he fought. That was enough. The galaxy, of course, knew none of this. To them, the human warship was invincible, an unstoppable force that rewrote reality and judged empires without fear or hesitation. That misunderstanding nearly ended everything. It began with a coalition, a desperate alliance of ancient powers who had ruled uncontested for tens of thousands of years. They had watched systems fall into reform and chaos. They had watched old hierarchies crumble without a single human soldier stepping foot on alien soil. And they had decided this could not be allowed to continue. They believed the warship was alone. They believed humans were bluffing. They believed, as so many before them had, that force would solve the problem. The coalition fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had seen since its earliest wars. Millions of ships, layered in overlapping formations, equipped with weapons designed specifically to counter what little data they had gathered on human technology. They did not challenge the warship directly. They surrounded Earth. The message they sent was short and carefully worded. Withdraw your vessel, or humanity will cease to exist. On Earth, alarms rang for the first time in centuries. Civilian populations moved underground. Defense grids powered up across the solar system. Ships that had never been meant for war took defensive positions. Human leaders watched the coalition fleet on silent displays. No panic spread, only resolve. The warship changed course immediately. It did not rush. It could not afford to. Every maneuver drained what little remained of its strength. As it moved, a final transmission spread across the galaxy, carried on every open channel. This is the last lesson, the human voice said. The coalition fleet tightened its formation. Weapons charged. They had prepared for this moment for generations. They would end the human threat in one decisive strike. The warship entered the system alone. The first volley hit it from every direction. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then the hull began to crack. Not explode. Crack. Fragments of dark armor peeled away, drifting silently into space. Power fluctuations rippled across the ship. Several internal decks lost gravity. Crew members were thrown hard against bulkheads. The Galaxy leaned forward. The myth was breaking. Inside the ship, red lights flared as systems failed. The core screamed warnings no one else could hear. The captain steadied himself and gave the order they had all known was coming. Open the final memory vaults. No one hesitated. These were not recorded memories. They were living ones. Stored consciousness fragments from volunteers across Earth. Artists, farmers, scientists, parents. People who would never know exactly how they were used, only that they had offered something of themselves so this moment could exist. The core flared brighter than it ever had. The warship straightened, and the Galaxy learned the difference between strength and sacrifice. The human ship did not fire at the fleet. It fired at the space between them. Reality twisted violently. Formations shattered as distances collapsed and expanded without pattern. Ships slammed into each other as navigation systems failed catastrophically. Entire wings vanished as their trajectories rewrote themselves into impossible paths. No star was destroyed. No planet was harmed. But the fleet ceased to exist as a fighting force in under a minute. What remained drifted, broken and powerless, crews alive but helpless. The warship barely held together. Its hull was shattered. Systems failed faster than they could be rerouted. The core burned through the last of its fuel with terrifying speed. The captain opened a channel to the disabled fleet. "This is what it cost us," he said. Data streamed outward. Human memory losses. Volunteer lists. Entire libraries of culture erased forever to power one ship, one campaign, one chance at peace. "This is the price we paid," the voice continued, "to make sure no one else would ever have to." The transmission ended. The warship turned back toward Earth. It would not make it. Inside, the crew prepared for shutdown, not evacuation. There was nowhere to go. They gathered where gravity still held, sitting quietly, some holding hands, others simply closing their eyes. They had done what they came to do. The Galaxy watched as the once terrifying vessel dimmed, its impossible presence fading into something almost ordinary, almost fragile. The coalition leaders surrendered within the hour. Not to Earth, to the idea that power without responsibility was over. The warship drifted onward, systems failing one by one, a dying monument carrying the weight of an entire species' choice. Humanity had not won by force. They had won by giving something no empire had ever been willing to give: themselves. And the Galaxy would never forget that lesson. Even if the humans aboard the ship could no longer remember everything they had lost to teach it. The warship did not explode. That alone unsettled the Galaxy. After its final stand near Earth, after disabling the coalition fleet and bleeding the last of its strength into space, most observers expected a dramatic end. A blaze of light. A symbol. Something easy to understand. Instead, the grave of empires simply slowed. Its fractured hull drifted into a stable orbit between Earth and the outer dark. Power signatures dwindled until only a faint echo remained. Long-range scans confirmed what many refused to believe. The ship was still there. Alive, but barely. Human engineers on Earth argued fiercely. Rescue operations were planned, canceled, then planned again. Every simulation ended the same way. Any attempt to dock, tow, or interfere would destabilize the warped physics holding the vessel together. Touching it would kill it. So humanity waited. Again, inside the warship, time had become uncertain. Systems cycled irregularly. Gravity failed in sections, returned in others. Lights dimmed, flared, then went dark for hours at a time. The crew adapted without complaint. They had always known how this would end. The captain moved through the ship slowly now, each step heavier than the last. He passed crew members who barely noticed him, not out of disrespect, but because some could no longer remember who he was. Not all at once. Not violently. Just small gaps. Names forgotten. Faces blurred. Purpose remained, even when the details faded. That was the cruel elegance of the design. The warship burned memory, not loyalty. Even as parts of themselves vanished, the crew still knew why they were there. They were here so humanity would never kneel again. Outside the ship, the Galaxy reacted in ways no one had predicted. There was no celebration. There was no unified relief. Instead, there was change. Empires dissolved, treaties built on intimidation. Military budgets collapsed overnight as populations demanded reforms before humans ever returned. Entire species abandoned expansion doctrines, fearing what might be waiting in the silence beyond their borders. But most shocking of all was what happened at the Galactic Council. They voted, unanimously. For the first time in their long, corrupt history, the Council passed a law without debate. It became known as the Human Clause. No civilization could claim ignorance as defense. No delayed vote could excuse inaction. No suffering witnessed and ignored would ever be considered neutral again. Failure to intervene in genocide, slavery, or extinction-level aggression would be treated as participation. The law carried no enforcement mechanism. None was needed. The empty orbit where the warship drifted was enough. Back on Earth, humanity did not celebrate either. There were no parades, no monuments built yet. Instead, there were quiet gatherings. Families watched the stars together. Elders told stories to children who had grown up hearing humans were weak, insignificant, obsolete. Those children now knew better. Humanity had not returned to the galaxy as conquerors. They had returned as a consequence. Inside the warship, the final phase began. The core no longer had enough memory fuel to sustain all systems. Automated protocols activated, sealing sections of the ship permanently. Crew members accepted it calmly, helping each other relocate as corridors went dark forever. One by one, entire decks became silent tombs. In the central command chamber, the captain gathered those who could still find their way there. Fewer than expected arrived. Some were lost to sealed sections. Some were lost to memory. A communications officer stood confused near the doorway, unsure why she had come. The captain gently guided her to a seat and held her hand until she calmed. She smiled at him, grateful, though she no longer knew his name. That was enough. The captain activated the final broadcast. Not to the Council, not to the galaxy, to Earth. The signal was weak, barely held together by failing systems, but it reached home. "This is the last report," he said, voice steady despite everything. "The mission is complete." He paused, searching for something he knew he had once prepared to say. It was gone, so he spoke from what remained. "The galaxy has learned," he continued. "Not because we destroyed it, but because we showed it the cost of ignoring us." He looked around the chamber. "We are staying," he said simply, "so Earth doesn't have to send anyone else." The transmission ended. On Earth, millions listened in silence. No one spoke. No one cried out. They understood. The warship would remain where it was, a broken guardian holding the line between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. A warning that did not need to move again. Inside the ship, the captain felt the final shift. The core entered a passive state. No more weapons. No more impossible physics. No more erasure. Just mass. Just metal. Just memoryless drift. One by one, the remaining lights went out. Crew members sat where they were, breathing slowing, minds empty of fear and pain alike. The ship did not kill them. It simply lets them rest. Outside, the galaxy watched as the most terrifying vessel ever built became something else entirely. A relic. A scar. A promise kept at unbearable cost. Centuries later, alien scholars would argue endlessly about what humanity truly was. Were they monsters, willing to erase reality itself? Were they saints, sacrificing everything for peace? The truth would be simpler. Humanity was the species that learned, far too early, that survival meant more than winning. It meant remembering. And when memory alone was not enough, they were willing to burn even that. The warship drifted on, silent and unmoving, its shadow falling across every map, every star chart, every decision made in fear or hope. The galaxy did not dare cross that shadow, because they knew what waited there. Not weapons, not war, but the weight of everything humanity had chosen to give up, so no one else would ever be forgotten again. Time moved differently after the warship fell silent. For humanity, it moved cautiously. For the galaxy, it moved in fear. For the grave of empires, time almost stopped. The vessel remained where it had drifted, an immense, broken shape hanging in the dark between Earth and the wider galaxy. No engines burned. No signals pulsed. No weapons stirred. Long-range scans confirmed what had already been accepted. The ship was inert, but no one dared approach it. Alien probes sent too close malfunctioned or simply vanished, not destroyed, but lost to subtle distortions still clinging to the ship like a fading echo. Salvage fleets never formed. Scientific expeditions were proposed and quietly abandoned. The galaxy had learned restraint the hard way. Instead, the warship became something new. A border. Every star map was redrawn with a silent exclusion zone around it. Trade routes curved wide. Military patrols rerouted instinctively. Even smugglers, those who lived by risk, refused to cross the shadow it cast. Because the ship did not need to move to be dangerous. It only needed to exist. On Earth, humanity entered an unfamiliar era. Peace. Not the fragile kind enforced by treaties and weapons, but a heavy, watchful peace shaped by memory. Human worlds expanded again, slowly, carefully. Colonies were founded not with pride, but with caution. Every new outpost carried records of the past, taught to children alongside language and science. Do not forget why the warship was built. Do not forget what silence once cost. Human leaders refused permanent seats on the Galactic Council. They refused dominance. They refused to patrol the galaxy as enforcers. We already paid, they said. We will not charge interest. That confused the galaxy more than the war ever had. Without a human threat actively advancing, some empires tested the limits. Small violations, quiet crackdowns, suppressed populations hidden behind false data. And every time it happened, the same thing followed. Nothing. No ships arrived. No weapons fired. No messages came from Earth. Only this. The grave of empires would shift. Not by engines. By gravity. Barely measurable, almost deniable, the warship's mass would alter local space just enough to change stellar tides, to disrupt navigation, to remind everyone that it was still there. Watching. Always watching. The violations stopped. Across the galaxy, a new phrase entered common speech. Do not wake the human relic. Inside the warship, there was no awareness of any of this. The crew was gone. Not dead in any way the galaxy understood. Life signs no longer registered, yet no decay followed. The ship's interior existed in a state between preservation and emptiness. Bodies rested where they had last sat or stood, untouched by time. Minds long since faded into quiet nothing. The captain remained in the command chair. His eyes were open, empty, frozen in the posture of someone who had finished his duty. Humanity did not retrieve them, not because they did not care, but because the crew had asked them not to. They had chosen to become part of the warning. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The galaxy changed. Empires fell, not to war, but to reform. Slavery became universally outlawed, not enforced by fleets, but by fear of consequence and the weight of precedent. Entire species once considered insignificant rose into prominence, protected not by power, but by the lesson humanity had carved into history. That lesson echoed everywhere. Silence does not mean weakness. Distance does not mean ignorance. And somewhere in the dark, humanity's silence waited. A crisis finally came that tested everything. A new species emerged from beyond mapped space. Fast, aggressive, utterly unfamiliar with galactic norms. They expanded violently, devouring border systems with brutal efficiency. They did not negotiate. They did not pause. They did not fear. The council panicked. They debated intervention, sanctions, containment. Fleets mobilized, then hesitated. Too many remembered what happened the last time hesitation ruled. At last, a message was sent to Earth. It was respectful, careful, afraid. We request guidance. Earth answered after a long delay. Humanity did not send ships. They did not send weapons. They sent history, records of the warship, the sacrifices, the laws written in absence, the price already paid. This is the standard, the human reply ended. Meet it or fail. The galaxy understood. This was their test now. They fought the new threat together. Not perfectly, not without loss, but they fought early, decisively, refusing to wait until it was convenient. The war ended without extinction. When it was over, the galaxy did something no one had expected. They built nothing. No statues. No monuments. They simply updated their maps. Every chart, every archive, every navigational database marked the same region of space with the same symbol. Not a danger warning. Not a military zone. A memorial. Visitors sometimes stopped at its edge. Pilots cut engines and drifted, staring at the distant shape of the human warship barely visible against the stars. They never hailed it. They never crossed the line. Some said prayers. Others recorded messages that would never be heard. Many simply watched in silence, feeling the weight of something they had never personally lost, but somehow understood. On Earth, children learned a simple truth. Humanity did not win the war. Humanity ended it. Not with strength alone, not with intelligence alone, but with the willingness to give up everything that made them human, so the rest of the galaxy could afford to stay that way. The grave of empires never spoke again. It did not need to. Its silence was louder than any weapon ever built. And as long as it remained, drifting between Earth and the stars, the galaxy remembered exactly why humanity was never underestimated again. Not because of what they could destroy, but because of what they had already sacrificed and would never take back. Long after fear faded, long after the warship became background to daily navigation charts, the galaxy began to misunderstand humanity again. Not as weak, but it's finished. The grave of empires had not moved in centuries. Its shadow was still respected, but familiarity softened what terror once sharpened. New generations of leaders rose who had not lived through reckoning. They studied the records, recited the lessons, and quietly assumed the worst was over. Humanity had paid its price. Humanity has made its point. Humanity was done. That assumption nearly broke the galaxy. It started small, as it always did. A frontier species disappeared along an unimportant trade corridor. No distress calls. No debris. The council marked it as an internal collapse and moved on. Then another vanished. Then another. Systems went dark without battle. Entire populations gone between census cycles. No weapon signatures. No visible fleets. Just absence. Panic returned, slower this time, heavier. Exploration probes finally captured fragments of truth. A new intelligence moved between stars not through space, but through probability. It consumed civilizations the way fire consumed oxygen, leaving nothing but emptiness that physics refused to explain. The galaxy had faced conquerors before. This was something else. Council fleets mobilized and failed. Weapons passed through targets that were not fully there. Shields collapsed against attacks that came from futures not yet written. Desperation spread. At last, the Council did what it had not done in centuries. They went to Earth. Humanity listened. Human leaders reviewed the data without panic. They recognized patterns others missed. Not because they were smarter, but because they had once built a weapon that touched the same forbidden edges of reality. The answer they reached was not comforting. The new threat fed on causality itself, on civilizations that believed the universe would protect them. Humanity did not. Humanity had never believed that. "We will not send another warship," Earth replied. "There will be no second grave." The Council felt something crack then. Fear. Has humanity finally reached its limit? Earth continued. "We already taught the galaxy how to survive this." Confusion followed. Then understanding. The lesson humanity had carved into history was not about power. It was about action. The galaxy had been trained to respond early, to intervene, to sacrifice comfort before catastrophe demanded blood. This was their test. Humanity would not save them again, but they would not abandon them either. Human scientists shared everything: models, theories, dangerous mathematics never meant to leave sealed vaults. Human advisors embedded with alien fleets, not as commanders, but as reminders. When to act. When waiting became complicated. The war was brutal. Worlds were lost. Lives were sacrificed. But something changed. No species waited for permission. No council delayed votes until it was convenient. When a system was threatened, fleets moved without debate. When intelligence warned of danger, evacuation began immediately, not after confirmation. The galaxy fought as one for the first time in its history, and the enemy faltered, not because it was outgunned, but because it no longer fed on hesitation. The final confrontation did not happen near Earth. It happened near the silent warship. The grave of empires drifted unchanged as the battle unfolded around it. Alien fleets maneuvered carefully, instinctively avoiding its shadow. Human observers watched from Earth, knowing exactly why the battle had drawn there. The enemy recoiled from the region, not from weapons, from memory embedded in space-time itself. The scar humanity had carved into reality centuries ago still existed. The laws broken once did not heal cleanly. The presence of the warship disrupted the enemy's ability to move, to predict, to consume. The galaxy used that opening. They did not destroy the threat. They contained it, sealed it beyond the reach of causality, imprisoned in a region of space where it could no longer feed. The war ended quietly. No final explosion. No victory parade. Just relief. In the aftermath, the council gathered once more. This time, humanity attended. Not as rulers. Not as judges. As witnesses. An alien representative spoke, voice steady despite everything. "We believed your warship was the point," they said. "We were wrong." Human delegates did not deny it. "You thought it was about fear," one replied. "It was about responsibility." The galaxy finally understood. The grave of empires was never meant to fight forever. It was meant to teach. And the lesson had worked. Centuries later, historians would debate endlessly whether humanity was the most dangerous species to ever rise among the stars. Some would argue yes. They would point to erased fleets, collapsed empires, and laws written in terror. Others would argue no. They would point to a galaxy that no longer waited while others burned. Both would be right. Humanity was dangerous, not because of its weapons, but because it was remembered, and because, when memory was not enough, it was willing to pay any price to ensure the galaxy never forgot again.